Okay, so here we are. We are, I guess, on location. We can say, for one of the few times, welcome regular Catholic Ad Lib viewers. I'm John Libertor, of course. We're over here in Pennsylvania, which is where I was born and raised, in Pennsylvania, to a place that I believe is a well-kept secret. Wayne may disagree with me a little bit there. But we are at the St. Thomas More House of Prayer. And we're going to spend time with Wayne and Nathan here for quite a few minutes and to get an understanding of their backgrounds and just what in the heck this place is about. I've been fortunate to be here a couple times. I was here for a men's silent retreat. I do plan on coming back. So let's start with you, Wayne. Give us a little snapshot of who you are and what you do with your life and your wife.
That's a good question. That's a long story, as you said. You didn't want all 75 years, so I got to pick the point at which to start. So
you're from Pennsylvania.
I grew up within a half mile of the House of Prayer.
And by the way, I didn't mention, we are technically in Cranberry, Pennsylvania.
Right, North Cranberry.
Not to be confused with Cranberry Township, which is just north of Pittsburgh.
Right.
I tell people that because they'll say, "Oh, I know Cranberry Township." Nope, not Cranberry Township. We're in the Diocese of Erie.
Right.
So we are southeast of Erie.
No, we're just directly south
of Erie. Roughly what?
70 miles.
70 miles. Okay, so for the geography. So you're from the area. Your background is what?
I grew up just half mile from here. Religiously, my background is fundamentalist Protestant. Grew up in the Free Methodist Church. Actually became an ordained Free Methodist clergyman back in 1975, and then made our way into the Catholic Church over a fairly, 2 or 3 year pilgrimage.
So I want to cut to the chase pretty quickly here.
Okay.
What was it that drew you to the Catholic faith?
The Catholic moral teaching on regards to contraception and marriage and family life was the first inkling we had that the Catholic Church had more to it than what we had thought.
Did you feel a yearning, a call, a void in the faith, the denomination that you were?
No, I did not. It was very, I look back on my Protestant experience with, a great deal of appreciation for the gifts that I received in the time.
So you're referring to theology of the body.
Not theology of the body, just simply the Humanae Vitae and the Church's teaching on the intrinsic evil nature of contraception.
Yep.
And so my wife and I, came to that realization before we became Catholic, and then it was through pursuing natural family planning that we were actually first introduced to the Catholic Church and real Catholics.
Great. And here you are.
Here we are 42 years later.
Awesome. And you're a businessman.
Grew up in the lumber business, hardwood lumber business, manufacturing moldings, flooring, have a sawmill. So we harvest timber, saw the lumber, dry it, and manufacture it into finished products.
Right. And then tell us, if you don't mind, about this building.
This building was built from 1990, spring 1998, finished in November of 1999, inspired by the preparation that John Paul II gave to the church for an introduction to what it would mean to enter into the new millennium and experience the Jubilee year. And so during that catechesis, the Holy Father introduced a church to the concept of the new evangelization, and which means re-evangelizing Catholics that have either lapsed or are at best lukewarm or mediocre in the practice of the faith.
Right.
And so my intention on this spot was to build a vacation home for my children, but when John Paul II began to encourage the laity to do something in order to promote the new evangelization, I was inspired to sketch out a picture of the St. Thomas More House of Prayer, and then eventually received guidance and confirmation that it was best I could tell the will of God that we build the retreat house, and confirmed through the praying of the Liturgy of the Hours, if you want to hear that story.
And I do, but I want to tell anybody that's watching, one of the things that drew me to this place is the fact that it's the St. Thomas More House of Prayer, because that is hands down my favorite saint. I love a lot of saints, but I love St. Thomas More. Love his story. So yes, let's touch on Liturgy of the Hours, but actually before we do that, let's introduce Nathan, and he can tell us where he comes from. I know there's a great story of how you got connected and how you were drawn here, et cetera. So a little bit about yourself, Nathan, please.
Sure, yeah. I grew up in a wonderful evangelical Christian family. Grew up, going to church a couple times a week. My parents were my youth pastors. They taught me to love Jesus Christ and to take very seriously relationship with him through reading of the scriptures, through a life of prayer and devotion. So much so that, about halfway through my college years, I felt a call to some kind of vocational ministry. Started to pursue, started to fill up my electives. I was a finance major, but started to fill up my electives with theology courses and biblical studies courses, and eventually ended up going to seminary and thought I was going to become a Presbyterian pastor. But by the time I got done with seminary, there was something within me that kind of knew that wasn't what God was calling me to. I didn't yet know what God was calling me to, but I went and ended up going on a 5-year kind of hiatus, if you will. I was working
hiatus meaning away from any faith?
No, just from this idea of pursuing pastoral ministry, where I ended up working in a restaurant. I was still doing, it's a restaurant that was owned by a great Christian woman who was doing Christian community development through her business, and invited me to come on and to work with them. We hired at-risk youth and people coming out of drug rehabs and prison, things like that. So definitely had a ministry component to it. But during those 5 years, I was introduced to someone who became kind of like a spiritual father to me, who had been schooled had received a PhD in early Christian studies and had read the church fathers very deeply and was transformed by his encounter with them. And so much so that as a Protestant, he started a ministry called the House of St. Michael the Archangel, which was all about introducing evangelical Protestants to the church fathers. And so that was my kind of the first inklings of me kind of, on a journey towards becoming Catholic. So I was reading the church fathers and began to notice in my own life just a profound transformation. It was the first time. I was in my early 20s, but it was late 20s. It was the first time in my life that I could say that I really began to have a longing and a desire for holiness. I wanted to be like Christ. I was reading these church fathers and just longing to have what they had. And that, long story short, kind of led me down a road where, I couldn't dismiss the fact that that they were Catholic, that they were, I was reading about them. Yeah, they're, talking about the Eucharist, talking about the hierarchy of the church, bishops and the, veneration of the saints, and just and also just a profound call to a life of holiness, through those extraordinary means that God has given us to answer that call. And so I started to just kind of go to Mass every so often. And
Before you were Catholic.
before I was Catholic, and a friend had invited me to the Oratory of St. Philip Neri in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where there was perpetual adoration, and I was, praying there different times, again as a Protestant, but noticing these
Amazing.
college students walking into an adoration chapel with lugging their big backpacks on their back and getting down on their knees and falling prostrate before the Blessed Sacrament. And from my reading of the Church Fathers, my heart had just been so primed for it that I knew that either that was Jesus or I better get the heck out of there. So and I just really believed like that was the Lord, and so that just led me down a path of seeking out the means by which I could answer that call to become Catholic, and entered RCIA, came into the church 10 years ago at the Easter Vigil. And so and just I guess to mention how I got here. I serve now as the executive director here at the St. Thomas More House of Prayer. A year after I became Catholic, I had been asked by a priest to come on board at his parish to do discipleship ministry and to help form Catholics in their faith. And I was looking for a place to bring them on retreat, and I couldn't find really anywhere that seemed quite compelling, in the Pittsburgh area, local Pittsburgh area. And but I did find this one place that looked pretty attractive on the pictures, and looked like a great place. And oh, by the way, they prayed the Liturgy of the Hours, which was something that we did as we had these discipleship groups that we would get together and we'd pray evening prayer, we'd have dinner, and then we'd discuss the writings of the saints. And so I thought, wow, that sounds right up our alley. So we'll go up there. So we started bringing groups up here, and it was just an incredible experience. Very, it was what everybody looked forward to every year. So for about 3 years, we were bringing groups here, and got to know Wayne and the family a little bit during that time. But really, it was one time that I was praying in the chapel where I had this peace come over me. My wife and I and our family were going through a bit of a transition, and asking questions about what was next. And I wrote in my journal, I don't want to leave this place. and so I went home and I sent an email out to Wayne's daughter Carrie, who took care of the place at the time, and I said, is there any chance you'd ever want somebody to come up and help further your mission and to take care of the retreat center? And I thought for sure the answer would be no. It was, small
Sure.
retreat center out in the middle of nowhere, and so I didn't even tell my wife that I was sending the email. And then, a day later, I got an email back saying,
I think it was the same day.
maybe it was the same day, I got an email back saying, yes, we'd love to have that conversation. I was like, oh no, what do I tell Bethany?
Right. Yeah.
So
You didn't carbon copy her on that email.
yeah, so it was a lengthy discernment process. We took about 6 months in discerning, but there were a number of signposts along the way that really confirmed that it was the Lord's will that we end up here. And so we've been here for the last 6 years.
And this is it's not your job, it's your vocation.
Yeah,
To be here, you're here every day.
yeah, yes, I'm here every day. Yeah,
That's great. And I want to insert something, and then we're going to get to you, Wayne, here about the Liturgy of the Hours. When you just said that you wrote in your journal you don't want to leave this place, I think you met my son Daniel. He's in the seminary, and he came up here before I had a chance to come, which kind of annoyed me, to be totally honest. Like, no, I wanted to get there first because we had talked about it. But he came here, and he sent me a text and said, Dad, you're not going to want to leave.
It has that effect.
That was the best thing and the worst thing for me to hear. But I did come, 9 months ago or so. So, Wayne, I want to tell a very short story.
Okay.
How God works. So I would drive across Pennsylvania on Interstate 80, And I think this is before Spotify was a part of my life and podcasts and stuff. And I would be on the radio and, looking for something new and different, right? And I was introduced to WAOB, which is We Are One Body, which I believe comes out of Latrobe, which is where I went to college. So that was interesting. That was ironic. But I would hear, this is what I tell people, I would hear an occasional commercial. Can I say, was it a commercial for the Hardwood Mall?
No,
Or-
that would have been on 88.3.
Oh, okay.
The Station of the Cross.
Oh, Station of the Cross. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
Thank you. So anyway, I was on that station long enough that I would hear this voice. And I heard about the Hardwood Mall. And every time I drove through, I got to find that station. And sure enough, there was this advertisement for the Hardwood Mall in Emlenton, Pennsylvania.
Right, yeah.
So I thought, Hardwood Mall, that sounds inviting. I got to get there someday. And then I believe you mentioned that at your business, you have a chapel.
It's at the Hardwood Mall.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. I remember that's something, I remember hearing that. I don't know if it was in your advertisement or commercial. But I want people to know this is the way God works. I came out here for the retreat, and one of the great things was Father John Paul Kuzma was going to lead the retreat, who I got to know. So this was going to be great. And I walk into the kitchen room there, and there's men gathered, and I walked up to a group. I don't know if you remember this. There was the first group there, and I just made my presence known there. I said, hello. And there was a gentleman to my right. And he said, hello. And that's all he said. And I said in reply, you're Wayne Hepler. and Wayne said, how did you know that? Like, how did you know that? And I said, it's the voice. I remembered. Anyway, sorry, I had to throw that in there.
If you knew how many times that's happened here.
Yeah, well, great.
Yes.
That's just great. I'm tickled by that story.
Not only advertise on the Station of the Cross, but we pray and record the Office of Readings, which is then played on WAOB every morning
At
and
5 a.m.
afternoon.
Is it 5 a.m.?
6:15 and
Okay.
2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay,
And so
okay.
through that, many other persons
Great.
have heard the voice.
Great.
So
It's funny, my hearing isn't that great, but my hearing in that regard is very good. Thank you, God. Okay, let's talk about you and the Liturgy of the Hours, or you and your wife.
Having listened to Nathan's story, you can first of all see why I say he must increase, I must decrease. So
Yes,
that's
a
what-
great way to put it,
yeah,
by the
so,
way. That's great. Yeah. So tell us, I think, look, I'm just coming to love the Liturgy of the Hours. I have a long way to go. I remember when I first met you, you gave like a 3-minute dissertation. And I was like blown away. I want you to replay that.
Oh
if you
yeah,
can.
right. But I can never do that. So,
Sure you
but
can.
I can start by relating the history that
Please.
ends up us having this conversation today. That's soon after we converted to the Catholic Church 41 years ago. We were introduced to a lady who had been a Benedictine nun in Erie, had left the convent, but still prayed the Liturgy of the Hours. And through a series of encounters through the Renew program in the Catholic Church and her invitation for me to teach a Bible study at her house, we eventually settled on better than a Bible study, we'll be praying evening prayer from the Liturgy of the Hours. And so that was my first introduction to the prayer of the Catholic Church. And so she bought us our first single volume Christian prayer book, pasted the prayers that are common for all the hours in the front and back, and essentially gave us the instruction on how to begin to pray the Liturgy of the Hours. And so it being, a lifelong student and, curious as to, I prefer not to do something that, I'm not really familiar with what I'm doing, and especially, knowing, entering to the Catholic Church, knowing that there's a more distinct role between the clergy and the laity, and that the clergy do certain things that, the laity, if I got up in front of the altar and said, "This is my body," nothing happens. But if the priest,
good example.
yeah. So I knew there was a distinction between priest and the laity that was not familiar to me as a Protestant preacher or Free Methodist preacher. So I wanted to know, among other things, is am I really allowed to do this? So the single volume Christian prayer book has an abridged version of the general instructions on the liturgy of the hours. So I began to devour that document to come to understand what is it that we are doing when we pray the liturgy of the hours. And then when I was became more acquainted with the single volume and realized that there was also a 4-volume set of the liturgy of the hours, which includes the whole of the offering of the prayer of the church, I wanted to have that as well. And that the first volume has the entire general instructions of the liturgy of the hours. So beginning to read that, I began to run across things that amazed me in regards to what exactly it is that this prayer is all about. And as I read the general instructions, it began, if you look at the footnotes and being, having gone to college, seminary, I'm not satisfied to read the text. If it has a footnote, I want to know where that came from. And pretty soon I was into the first document published from the Second Vatican Council is the Constitution on the Sacred Liturgy. So the general instructions referred me to that document. So I began to read that document, and it was in that document that I completed my understanding of what it means to participate in the sacred liturgy of the Catholic Church, because typically most people understand that the Holy Eucharist is the source and summit of the liturgy, and then from that flows the other 6 sacraments. But what I discovered when I read the whole of the Constitution on the Sacred Liturgy was that the Liturgy of the Hours, or Divine Office, was also sacred liturgy. Okay, and by that time I had read section 8 in the document, and there I read, every liturgical action is an action of Christ together with his church, which is therefore an action of a preeminent kind. So therefore, when the church prays together with Christ in the liturgy, the prayer is unequal in its title to power and degree of effectiveness. So in the logical workings of my mind, wait a minute, the liturgy of the hours, is sacred liturgy. It is of the same quality, it is endowed with the same supernatural quality. And I just read that because of that, it is unequaled in its title to power and degree of effectiveness. This is the prayer I'm going to pray. Right. And I'm going to, pray.
When was that? How long ago?
When
did you start down this road?
That would have been probably 1985, 5 or 6.
So it's been your life for...
Yeah, 40 years. Yeah. So, not only do I, in that, moment or, time of discovery, I realize, this is the prayer I'm going to, I'm going to lay the foundation of my prayer life with this prayer. Because, if this is true, then why would you want to start any other place if it's unequaled in its title to power and degree of effectiveness? And so not only am I going to, pray this prayer, make this the foundation of my prayer life, but the rest of my life, I'm going to teach as many people as possible to enter into this prayer.
And that's why we're here.
That's, so we began, what I began to do, because I was in, when I entered into the St. Stephen Parish in 1984, the priest who gave us instruction knew that I'd been a Protestant clergyman, so he said, "Aha! Here's a guy I can give a lot of things to do." And so, whether it was teaching CCD or leading the Renew program or whatever it was, or in being involved in the Catholic schools, either as a member of the school board or whatever. Anytime I was in charge of a meeting, guess what we did? We started with the hour of prayer that was closest to the time that we were, having our meeting. Right. And so through that, we also, because it was the church's teaching on, human sexuality, contraception that attracted us to the church, we immediately began to be deeply involved in the natural family planning apostolate in the diocese. Right. And so the teachers of the natural family planning teachers monthly would come down to our house, which is just about a quarter of a mile from here, on once a month on a Saturday evening for support. And so we began our evening prayer, and I put together a detailed instruction sheet of how you do that. And so through that, began to introduce dozens of people and families to pray the Liturgy of the Hours.
For people that have no clue,
Mm-hmm.
do you explain to them that it's prayed 7 times a day, right?
Well, I start by saying, you don't have to do the whole thing.
Right. Well,
you can start small.
True.
But you begin by, here, just let me read from the general
Sure.
Instruction. It says, the Liturgy of the Hours, like other liturgical actions, is not something private, but belongs to the whole body of the church. So begin to here's the,
you can't pray it privately.
You can't. Right. Yeah, so,
but it's intended to be communal.
If you read the general instruction, you'll find that praying it individually is the last option you should take. Okay. As soon as you've exhausted all other possibilities. Okay, so we were introducing people to pray the office, and for 15 years. And so the millennium's coming up, and as I think I already mentioned, that John Paul II was preparing the church to enter into the Jubilee year. So, and I heard his call for the laity to do something specific, and so as I one morning, probably in 1997, I took out a 8.5 by 11 graph tablet and drew within probably an hour a picture of the St. Thomas More House of Prayer, almost exactly as you experience it. And then I was taken aback, because it's a fairly big project, and I grew up in this neighborhood, and when I grew up here, there's not a single Catholic in the neighborhood, and now here, Wayne Hepler, graduates from seminary, takes the church in Flint, Michigan, Free Methodist Church. But when he comes back as an Episcopalian, and within a year he's turned Catholic. And not only that, they have, when they came back, they have 4 kids. Now they have 8 kids. And so this guy's gone off the deep end. And
I love how he laughs about it.
And now, I've drawn out this picture that's, the design is every bit as big as most Protestant churches. And now I have to say, do I have to do this too?
I just think this place is so unique because and a friend of mine, Nathan, you probably don't remember him because a lot of people come through. Jason Shell is in our men's group, and he said, "Hey, John, I'm going over to Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. Anything you'd recommend?" Well, I said, "Well, sure." And I'm giving him churches and stuff, and I said, "It's a little bit of a drive, but you might want to check out St. Thomas More House of Prayer." Surprisingly, he did. And a week or 2 ago on our men's call, he said, "Hey, I want you to know, I went over there with my wife. I think they stayed overnight." But he said, "What amazes me is a singular focus." So I want to shift to Nathan, and if you could, we're going to spend just about 5 more minutes. What do we do here? What do you do here? What goes on here? How do people access it? Why does this place exist?
Yeah, so our mission is to pray and promote the Liturgy of the Hours. So we do have a singular focus, which is, really helpful because we kind of, we measure success by whether or not we're doing our mission. And so the first part of that mission is simply praying the Liturgy of the Hours. And we strive to do that publicly and communally. So we make every time that we can, that it's possible, we make a public and communal offering of the Liturgy of the Hours in our chapel, beginning with Office of Readings at 5:30 in the morning. We have morning prayer at 8 o'clock. We have the little hours throughout the day, mid-morning, midday, mid-afternoon. We have evening prayer at 5:30, and then night prayer at 8 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. And so we do that daily. We do take a little bit of a break on Sundays, but come back, we resume with Vespers on Sunday Vespers and night prayer, on Sundays. And so the way that we fulfill our kind of second part of our mission by promoting the Liturgy of the Hours is, of course, simply by welcoming people into our retreat center. So we have 14 guest rooms here. We have a priest apartment, and we kind of advertise it as, kind of bring your own retreat and participate with us in the Liturgy of the Hours and structure, organize anything you do on retreat just around the praying of the Liturgy of the Hours. We'll take care of the Liturgy of the Hours. You kind of, are in charge of the rest,
Right. That's a good way to put it.
And so we assume that everybody who comes through our doors that, that they maybe have either no experience of praying the Liturgy of the Hours or maybe a very elementary understanding of the Liturgy of the Hours. So we do what we can to, announce the page numbers, tell them where to put their ribbons, all of that kind of thing. We lead and guide the prayer. We don't just kind of, leave you in the dust. And so we kind of, consider ourselves a teaching apostolate. And I always let people know when they come on retreat. And by the way, not only groups, but also individuals. I was just talking to a lady, her and a few friends are coming for a retreat next week. They said, "Oh, by the way, we've never prayed the Liturgy of the Hours before." I said, "Well, great." I said, if you'd like to, on Wednesday, why don't we sit down, after morning prayer, and I'd love to, answer any questions you might have about the Liturgy of the Hours, kind of, fill in any gaps where you might want to understand more about the prayer of the church. Right. So, "Oh, great." So I always, make a point to offer that to our guests so that they can understand what we do and why we do it. Yep. And so we organize some of our own retreats over the course of the year, the most important of which being our annual Liturgy of the Hours retreat, which started about 5 years ago as a half-day retreat, and realized pretty quick that, man, this is too much to fit into a half-day. So we made it an overnight retreat, which we did for a few years. And then starting this beginning of September, first weekend of September this year, we decided to do a whole weekend retreat. So it just, we kind of keep expanding because, some people have come and, they've said this is, less of a retreat and more like a Liturgy of the Hours boot camp, and,
Right.
and so it really is that kind of,
Right.
so we're going to space it out a little bit more, but we kind of take a real deep dive into the history of the Liturgy of the Hours. Where does it come from? How do we get the prayer books that we have today?
Yeah.
But then also my favorite part is giving kind of an in-depth theology and spirituality behind that undergirds the Liturgy of the Hours. What the church teaches about the Liturgy of the Hours, what some of the the saints have said about the Psalms, the praying of the office, and then of course practical instruction as well. So that's our most important retreat. We also have a number of retreats, like a fall retreat and a spring retreat that we kind of partner with a religious community called the Community of St. John. Their priests come out and give retreats, and then we also have, as you mentioned earlier, the men's retreat in the beginning of Lent, and yeah, so during those retreats, it's amazing because those retreats, not including the Liturgy of the Hours retreat, have different topics, themes, etc. But one of the things that always has the staying power is, when by the time people leave at the end of the weekend, the most impressionable thing has been the communal praying of the Liturgy of the Hours. Yeah. Even for those who come with some kind of familiarity with the Liturgy of the Hours, right. Unfortunately, they have no experience praying it in a communal setting before the Blessed Sacrament. Right. When we have a priest with us, we'll do solemn vespers. Very, very few have experience doing anything like that. True. So it always, leaves a great impact, on people. So much so that they're constantly just kind of coming back and wanting more of it. And so our goal moving forward and in the future is one, to just keep doing what we're doing, praying the Liturgy of the Hours. Trust.
So what are we going to do if we get tired of praying?
Yeah, that's right. We're just going to keep praying the Liturgy of the Hours. Yeah. So there was a priest who came. Well, I'll let you tell the story because that was before my time. But
the first priest that did his personal retreat here, when he found out what our mission was, one of his first questions was, "Wayne, what are you going to do when you get tired of praying the Liturgy of the Hours?" And so at our 25th anniversary, just a couple months ago, I recalled that, and I asked the congregation, what do you think we're going to do if and when we get tired of praying the Liturgy of the Hours? Yeah. And the answer, we're just going to keep praying the Liturgy of the Hours, because awesome. It's bigger than we are. Yeah. That's it.
How can people reach internet and all that?
liturgyofthehours.org. Since the apostolate was founded back in before 2000, before as the internet was just kind of coming to, thankfully somebody got liturgyofthehours.org, because I think today that would be a kind of a hot commodity.
Yeah, sure, that's good.
So point. We have liturgyofthehours.org is where you can find all the information about our retreat center, all the retreats that we have. We also have great resources on there. Our most visited page is called Today's Pages. We put together a resource that gives you all the page numbers you need to pray morning and evening prayer, whether you're using the single volume Christian prayer book or the 4-volume set. For every day of the month, and so there's no guesswork. It's just laid out all for you there, and then also some great articles, and we have a Substack where we write periodically just on different themes around the Liturgy of the Hours, and so we're on Facebook, we have Instagram, and all that, but really we've talked a lot about this as a as a board and, people close to the House of Prayer about, the purpose of our online efforts is really to draw people to this place. Yes. And to give them the experience that, we've had, here where, the reality is people walk through the doors here and they feel something different. Yeah. They feel something special. And I think, one, we have the Blessed Sacrament, so that's a pretty big deal. Yes. But two, these are prayer-soaked walls, and not just generically prayer-soaked walls, but they're walls that have been a home and have housed the public and communal praying of the church's prayer, which, as Wayne said, is unequaled in its title to power and degree of effectiveness. And so no wonder when people come, they don't want to leave, because it's just the reality of, what descends upon this place every time the bell rings and we come to gather for prayer is really something that you're not going to find, anywhere else except, if you can find another place where the Liturgy of the Hours is being offered, which, by the way, just the last thing I'll say is, a deep desire and a longing for us is yes, we want to keep, people coming back to us, but we also want to see a renewal of sorts in the church, where, this becomes the common experience of, every person in their parish, where, that, St. John Paul II, envisioned parish communities celebrating lauds and vespers every single day, where the parish community comes together to be a community of, first of all, of prayer, rooted and grounded, not just in generically, some kind of prayer, but in the church's prayer, the liturgical prayer of the church. And so that's our vision. We hope to be able to equip people to do that and to, do whatever we can to help resource that. We have people who've, used our Sunday Vespers prayer books and whatnot in their parishes, and so yeah, that's.
Well, this has been great. I'm going to do my part in promoting this place. I know it is special. I loved how you put it, the prayer-soaked walls. I think that's a very accurate description, because I've been here for a retreat. But I just think it's great too that you're open to an individual, a person, if they want to come and spend a day or a night, or the word Paustinia comes to mind, where people just want to be secluded and quiet.
Just interrupt you, saying not just Catholics, also Protestants, and
thank you for that. Yes, thank you.
We talked about that at our last board meeting, and I think actually, if we were keeping track, the uptick in the number of Protestants that
That's
I
great.
just
Yeah.
last week I come in to pray morning prayer. There's a couple heading for the chapel. I asked them if they they said, "Oh, we're staying in your Airbnb that's just next door here." So I said, "Oh, so would you like to pray?" "Oh, yeah, we came over to pray to see what." And so I said, "Well, are you Catholic?" "No, we're Protestants." But I said, "Well, here's the books," and they enthusiastically entered into the prayer.
Wow.
As we got further acquainted after the prayer, finally, came to mind, "What is your occupation?" And the wife said, "Oh, he's an Assemblies of God pastor." So, and
For now.
yeah.
Yeah, so thank you again. Thank you both for giving us your time.
Thanks
And
be to
again,
God.
we'll
It's not my time.
right.
So and
Right.
the beauty of the Liturgy of the Hours is that as I enter into it, it sanctifies time. Okay, so and here's your instruction: is that I challenge you to read the first, at least the first 40 pages of the general instructions of, I know your wife bought you a 4-volume set, so
Yes.
right in the first
Bought
volume.
them from here.
Right in the first volume
I will do
is the
that.
general instruction. So if you read the first stage, I will have Andrew keep you accountable.
Yes, he will. He will. Thank you again.
Yeah,
I'm just so glad that we could be here. And after this, I think we're going to do a little bit of a tour. Nathan is going to guide us, so stay
Right.
tuned for that.
Always remember, he must increase,
And you
I must
decrease.
decrease.
So we can forget about Wayne.
All right.